Hey folks, Lachlan here. When people have occasion to think about the nature of societal collapse, which is something I hope you don't do too often because of how depressing it is, we tend to think of it as one single cataclysmic event, such as a war or a natural disaster or a famine. But reality has shown that such events tend not to play out that way. As a South African, I know quite something about social collapse because I live in a country that has experienced it on a greater scale than most other places in the world. In the 80s and early 90s, South Africa was the big celebrity cause because the world wanted to see an end to apartheid. Apartheid, for those of you who are still unaware, is the system of racial segregation that privileged white South Africans over non-whites. For the record, I think that discrimination on the basis of race is wrong, so I'm going to get that out there right in front before anyone accuses me of anything. But what you can learn from South Africa is how social collapse actually happens. Because you see, as I said, in the 80s and 90s, we were big in the news, and it was very popular among celebrities, particularly musicians and performers, to organize concerts to raise funds for those who were opposed to apartheid. However, in the years since apartheid's fall, South Africa has steadily declined to the point where we now live in a society that is so controlled and basically overwhelmed by corruption that even as someone who has lived here my entire life, it is difficult for me to fathom the scale of things. But that's not something you're likely to hear about in the mainstream media because they have a vested interest in continuing to believe that they were correct in pushing Rainbow Nation propaganda and treating Nelson Mandela as some sort of saintly figure who could do no wrong. But I want to be clear that it is the African National Congress, the party of Nelson Mandela, that has been in power since 1994 and presided over our downfall to their own benefit. You see, the collapse of a society, whether it's a town, a city, or a country, doesn't happen overnight. Because if it did, people would notice and do something to stop it. Those who seek to take down a community for their own profit do so slowly, so that when it happens gradually, people are more inclined to accept small changes over time. It's a lot easier to convince people that what you're doing is correct when you don't lay all your cards out all at once. If you can slowly accustom them to these changes over time, then you're not likely to encounter as much resistance as you would if, say, as a leader, you were to go on TV and announce that you would be raising taxes by 85% or dispossessing people of their property simply because they had blonde hair, for example. So what I'm saying is that social collapse is not always easy to see. So if you want to avoid it wherever it is that you live, you have to pay attention for the small signs. Unfortunately, we used to be able to rely on the media, as in newspapers and television, mainstream journalism, in other words, to pay attention to these things and report when they happen. However, mainstream media is now so corporate and so corrupt that they are in fact complicit in the downfall of not only South Africa, but also much of the Western world. So what this leaves us as ordinary people with is the realization that we're on our own. And if we want to defend what we consider important, we have to do it ourselves. So when somebody questions your values, you don't have to take their questions lightly. You don't have to back down to them. You can simply say, this is what I believe, and if you don't like it, get fucked. That's my rant for the day, and I hope that somewhere in there you find something worthwhile. For now, farewell.